Last week I said my only real complaint about Part 5 of Ahsoka was that I wished we got a little time with the villains. Well, Dave Filoni sure came through this time around with Part 6, appropriately named Far, Far Away. We are finally in that other galaxy, and this episode had everything. Night Sisters, Thrawn, new troopers, crab people, Ezra, and so much more, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This was just a blast to watch all the way through. We start off with our only scene that includes Ahsoka as she and Huyang pass the time in the mouth of a Purrgil. First, they fondly reminisce about their time at the Jedi Temple, and Huyang mentions the 3 parts of the history of the galaxy. Ahsoka says Part 1 was her favorite of the 3, which I'm choosing to take as a joke about Star Wars fans picking their favorite Star Wars trilogy or movie within a trilogy, but more importantly, they discuss Sabine's choice to go with Baylan willingly and the ramifications that will have on the entire galaxy, which is a point that gets brought up several times by several characters for the rest of the episode. I don't get the sense Ahsoka is blaming Sabine or is angry with her, but she is afraid that her Padawan made a selfish choice instead of a selfless one. Maybe she did, but I think there's more to learn about the topic. But let's cut over to the villains, where we finally reach Peridea. I was definitely getting anxious for the story to reach this point and was feeling frustrated back in Part 3 that we would clearly be hanging out on Cetos for a while, but the extended buildup got me so hyped to be in the far galaxy, and we immediately learned some fun new lore about how it's connected to the ancient Dathomiri, and it's a graveyard for the Purrgil, and the Night Sisters first learned to ride the whales, and it's all just so cool. Then we actually get to see some full-on classic Clone Wars Night Sisters on the top of a tower that looks like a mix between Orthanc and Minas Tirith from Lord of the Rings. This full dive into the high fantasy side of Star Wars is really doing it for me, and I love that the Night Sisters are from a completely different galaxy, because in hindsight, it makes sense that they have a unique connection to the Force when compared to most other cultures we've seen. Jumping into something else I've been waiting for this show to do, Baylan starts to tell Shin a little bit about his past, hearing stories at the Jedi Temple just like Ahsoka and Huyang talked about, but he doesn't have that same level of fondness. He's not angry or even dismissive, he just seems jaded. He sees the same cycles of history repeating over and over as if they're inevitable. It reminds me of a Battlestar Galactica mantra that all of this has happened before and all of it will happen again. He's not wrong, Star Wars history does repeat itself in more ways than one, and so does real-world history. Baylan seeks some kind of power that he believes will stop that cycle, which still raises plenty of questions, but I'll take anything about his motivations at this point. But let's keep things moving from one villain to another, because the Grand Admiral arrives in the most awesomely over-the-top way. He brings in his busted-up but still badass-looking Star Destroyer, the Chimera, complete with the artwork. I love that you can see how heavily damaged the ship was from the events of Star Wars Rebels. It's been shoddily repaired and some of the engines are even out. Inside we meet the Night Troopers, also in damaged armor, held together by red duct tape and dreams, or more likely, Night Sister fabric and maybe magic. We see Enoch, the special captain of the guard or something, with his creepy mask. We hear the organ music as the Kiners knock it out of the park yet again, and then there's Thrawn himself. I love the voice, I love the demeanor, I mostly love the look. I think it could be improved, but I'm more than happy for now. It kinda reminds me of the first time we saw Ahsoka in live action, and then she has looked better and better with every appearance. Thrawn's been through a lot these past 10 years, I'm willing to give him some time to get his stuff together. Apparently they're gonna need 3 days before they can leave anyway, because they have to load up some Night Sister cargo from the catacombs? Excuse me, what now? Are we loading up a bunch of dead Night Sister bodies on this Star Destroyer? Because they can very quickly become undead Night Sister bodies, and yes, that is something I would like to see right as we enter October. Thank you. Thrawn learns Sabine is around and seems eager to let her rush off to find Ezra, telling Baylan that she will be useful to them. So I definitely don't trust any of this. Why did he let Ezra go in the first place? Or did Ezra escape and Thrawn never bothered to find him? Or maybe he's been keeping tabs on the young Jedi this whole time? There's definitely something fishy going on. Thrawn asks Sabine a couple of times about her gamble to find Ezra at the expense of bringing war back to her galaxy, just like Ahsoka talked about with Huyang, which is a valid concern. Sabine is prioritizing one person over a galaxy full of people, but like I said earlier, I think there is more to this that we haven't seen yet. She heads off to search for Ezra, fights some nomads on her journey, and eventually meets some little crab alien people who are just delightful. They feel like they're straight out of some of the weirdest episodes of the Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels. They recognize the Rebel insignia on Sabine's shoulder, which makes them lead her straight to her long-lost friend. That reunion was excellent. Iman Esfandi was perfect as Ezra, stellar casting. I love that moment where he casually says, "Hey, the plan worked, didn't it?" Then realizes he has to ask to make sure it did work, right? Because of course he wouldn't know. It is wild that it's been over 5 years since Star Wars Rebels ended and the epilogue told us Sabine was going off to find her friend. I always thought we would get that story, but I didn't imagine we would get to see it like this, and that a whole new audience might be curiously wondering if they should also check out that animated show, and yes, you should. Jumping back a bit, Thrawn tells Baylan and Shin to destroy Ezra if Sabine finds him. I think we might be seeing some early cracks in the relationship between the two mercenaries at this point. Shin seemed surprised that Baylan is only technically honoring his agreement with Sabine, but come on, dude, you're certainly going back on your word that no harm would come to her. Maybe as he gets closer and closer to what he wants, he will get more and more tunnel vision, only caring about whatever power it is that he seeks. His honor could mean less and less, and Shin might be taking note. While they track Sabine, we get even more insight into their relationship. Shin doesn't fully seem to know who or what she is. She hears the description of Ezra as a, quote, Boken Jedi trained in the wild after the Jedi Order fell, and she thinks she fits that description too. Baylan has to correct her that he is making her into something more, or different at least. Shin asks if he misses the Jedi Order, and he claims to just miss the idea of it, but not the truth behind it or the weakness within it. I love that, because there are a lot of stories about the failures of the Jedi Order. The entire prequel trilogy highlights its flaws. Inquisitor: Rise of the Red Blade was a recent book that really looked into how the Order could fail someone. But I think it's important to note that the Jedi are still the good guys of Star Wars. I think the institution of the Jedi Order lost its way for sure, but that doesn't mean there is no longer any value in being a Jedi. I think Baylan and Ahsoka are two characters who felt that the Jedi Order failed them. We straight up saw how they failed Ahsoka in the Clone Wars. Things aren't so clear when it comes to Baylan, but he definitely seems completely disillusioned by them because they failed to live up to their ideals. Ahsoka is currently on the path to becoming a Jedi once again, recognizing that the failure of that institution doesn't have to define her identity as a Jedi, but Baylan seems to not know what his morality is without a council to tell him what it should be. Once he lost faith in the Jedi, he tossed all of its teachings out the window, but just because you learned a lesson from a flawed system doesn't mean it's all bad or wrong. Surely he knows he isn't in the right when he's stabbing New Republic officers in the chest, right? Oh, Baylan, I actually do feel for him, and that's all down to how great Ray Stevenson is in this role. Throughout the episode, Shin expresses her discomfort with the witches and Peridia. She calls it a wasteland, and she simply can't see what Baylan sees. I think he is blinded by this mythical power he seeks. Maybe it is mythical. He doesn't even know if it exists. Whatever is going on, Shin seems way less into the idea of sticking around on this planet. Like I said before, I think there's a rift in their relationship on the horizon. As the episode approaches its end, Thrawn is warned by the Night Sisters of Ahsoka's impending arrival, and he prepares by asking every question he can think to ask. That was a simple moment, but it just felt right. And then he asks the Night Sisters for the aid of their magic, and holy cow, am I hoping we get to see some full-on green flame insanity next week. With only 2 episodes to go, I expect the Grand Admiral will be making his way home soon. Probably in Part 7, maybe even right at the start, leaving Sabine, Ezra, Baylan, and Shin behind. But of course Ahsoka and Huyang will arrive. They can deal with Baylan and whatever he's after, maybe become best friends with Shin, let her into the group, and then head home in a whale. That'll give Thrawn a nice head start to beat up on the overly confident New Republic fleet waiting at Cetos. I still think we need a moment to see him as a competent and terrifying military commander. Yes, we've met the man now, but we need to see why he's such a danger to the galaxy rather than just talk about it over and over. And a giant space battle at the end of the season would be a blast to watch. That's how I'm guessing the final 2 weeks will go, but it's all speculation, which I'm usually wrong about. I also have several questions I would like answered, like how does Thrawn know the Night Sisters? Have those 3 specifically always been on Peridia? Why did they ally with Thrawn? Why did Thrawn and Ezra separate? What's the deal with Enoch? What is Baylan really after? There's a lot to get to, and I'm not holding my breath on answers for all of them, at least not yet. I was patient in the earlier half of this series, and I'm feeling very rewarded and satisfied today, so I'll continue to be patient and just enjoy the ride. That's everything I've got to say about Part 6 for now, so let me know what you thought of it in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Ahsoka coverage, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page for our video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.